Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tilting Ground with Michael Muto. We are keeping the political theme alive with this episode. If you've listened to the past episodes, you'd know that you could say the politics here have leaned slightly to the left, or to the left. So I thought, in the interest of just a fair and open space, we'd get someone from the other side. And I couldn't think of a better person than one of my old high school friends, who I know through these interactive digital age that he is up to date on conservative politics. It's my friend Travis Burke. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks so much for the invite. Listen to some of your other episodes, and it's a great thing you got going here.
Well, I just try to ask questions and move the discussion forward. I try not to. I'm just trying to get information out to people. So
Absolutely.
in a fair and unbiased way, or as fair and unbiased as we can be as humans.
Absolutely. Well, let's give it a shot.
Famous last words, right?
Yes.
So I brought you on because you're, like I said in the intro, you're a conservative or Republican, and your team, your party is in a little bit of trouble. I think objectively is in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah. Well, it's been quite a year, and things are not always as they appear in politics, but certainly right now it looks like a tough spot. There's a lot of division, and that's not exactly the positioning you want heading into a national election in the fall.
So how did it get here? How did it get to this? Why? Well, the elephant in the room, we haven't said it yet, is that Donald Trump is the candidate for president, and I just don't understand. I don't understand how that happened. Was it there too many people? Were there just bad people running? Or what?
I think I think you shouldn't feel bad because I think everybody's trying to kind of answer that question. I don't think any of us have figured it out, or I don't even know if anyone can fully figure it out because you hear all these different explanations. It's this or it's that, and the truth is that it's probably all of those things. It's probably a combination of a million different things that caused us to arrive at this moment. In terms of the Republican Party, I think what you're seeing is part of the process of being the party out of power. There's sort of a natural division that happens when you don't have a national political figure as the head of your party, as you have when you're occupying the White House. I think if you look back at like the Bush years, for instance, there's a lot of criticism looking back now of President Bush on the right, but at the time that he was president, people tended to keep those feelings to themselves because he was popular on a personal level. People liked him, and he was the leader of the movement and the party. So, there is a little bit of a rally around the leader effect that happens when you're in the White House. And so when you lose it, there is a process that goes into place where, the first thing happens is you try to figure out whose fault it was. There's a blame game, fingers get pointed, and then you go through and you're an opposition party and, you kind of spend all your time responding to the policies and the proposals of the White House. And in the Republicans' case in 2008, they didn't have the Congress either. And so I guess what I'm getting at is that there's a lot of division because there's a lot of difference of opinion as to what the right path is to get back to where we want, back to leading the country from the White House. And so, you see in opposition movements, and it's not just unique to our system, but you see these kind of struggles within a party kind of trying to define what the direction of the party is going to be the next time there's a national election. And
so it's kind of like there's a power void, and you're scrambling to fill it.
Game of Thrones, when the king falls, there's a struggle between the clans, sort of, if you will, for primacy, for the throne, and that tends to lead to division. I think I think what you're seeing now is sort of unprecedented because one, you've got this entire new architecture of social media that gives everybody their own personal platform, and so one, everybody's got an outlet to tell you what they think, and two, I mean, the other side of it is everybody's got access to information, and so
You'd think this wouldn't, Donald Trump wouldn't be the candidate in a world with free information.
well, you would think that, but the other thing is that people can self-select their sources of information. I mean, that's part of it too,
Yeah, I think we touched on that in the last podcast.
Yeah.
How you just fill your news feed with what you want to hear
Sure.
to prop your own beliefs up. And that's kind of the point of this is to challenge your own boundaries.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of forces at play. I mean, we could probably do an entire series of podcasts on this question alone. On the right, there have been differences of opinion about how to act as a opposition party. Differences of opinion about how far to go in pursuing things like repealing Obamacare, and there's been unhappiness in the base of the party with the most committed supporters of the party with the leadership, that they haven't been as confrontational as they would like. And I think the real key here that sometimes gets missed is they were promised, like in 2010 and in 2012, which wasn't a successful campaign, and again in 2014, the congressional leadership said, if you vote for us, we're going to repeal Obamacare. People took that as a promise, and when they then, said, okay, now it's time to do this, and the leadership kind of balked at it and said, well, President Obama's the president, and he's never going to do that. Well, that may be true, but it also isn't what you said when you were running for office, and so that causes some agitation. And then I think, so there are definitely factors on the right that help lead to this moment, the kind of divisions that we've been talking about. And, I think it would be dishonest not to say that some of what the left has been engaged in over the past 8 years has led to some of it too.
How so? What do you mean?
Sure, I think it's been a tactic of the White House and of Democrats more generally to use race as a way to delegitimize people's oppositions to the policies of President Obama, and it's a very effective tactic because it kind of shuts down the debate. Like there's no talk about the merits if the person disagrees with you because you're because of your race, but it also it leads the discussion in a very ugly direction, and I think people resent it, and I think that people are willing to go to somebody who, quote unquote, is not PC as a standard bearer because they're sick and tired of being picked on. So there's an element of that too.
But I mean, there is a race problem in the country. I mean, it hasn't all been solved since the civil rights movement.
Sure. I think also you have to look at what's going on the college campuses around the country. I mean, it's pretty undeniable that on the college campuses, the left is trying to completely shut down voices that they don't like. The whole kind of like safe spaces movement, the whole trigger warning thing, and I think that's tied up in it too. I think that's why when Donald Trump talks about political correctness, it resonates with a lot of people rather than seeming silly as it might to some.
I know what you're saying. Is people like a straight shooter, but the funny thing is I don't. And he's not a straight shooter. That's the part that always boggles my mind.
Yeah.
when people say, "Oh, I support Donald Trump," he's a guy who gets things done. He does what he says, and it's like, well, wait, no, none of that is true. That's the part that blows me away.
Yeah, well,
The people, if it's any candidate, I mean, I'm sure there's
I think
talk
his
that's always
appeal
happened.
too. It's not just that quote unquote he's a straight shooter. It's that he's forceful and that he's not of Washington. You know what
I
I
think
mean?
that last one's the big one.
Yeah, I mean it is the big one. I'm got my Washington insider card or whatever. I've been here for a long time and been working in this business for a long time, and the anger people feel towards Washington D.C. is real. It's out there, and I think that's one of the reasons, one of the very big reasons why we are where we are today. He's definitely been able to channel that. There was a candidate in the field, Ted Cruz, who basically staked his candidacy on that principle, and he was unable to compete with Donald head to head. He didn't have the ability to dominate the conversation and the narrative, and
I'm stealing this from another podcast, but he got outsidered.
yeah, he did. He did. Um, it was pretty stunning to watch because Ted Cruz is a pretty smart guy, and um, he'd been setting this up for years, but he did get beat at his own game.
Which
So
is pretty crazy.
it is pretty crazy. It is pretty crazy, but I think one thing that we've learned, at least over the primary season, is not to underestimate Donald Trump.
No, you just can't. I mean, even going now, I still think you can't. I mean, anything's possible with the Donald.
I think that's right. I think it could go either way. It really could. You know, there are some people that think there's no way that he can win, and I think those people would be surprised. But I think he could also lose in historic fashion. I mean,
He definitely puts any possibility in play.
yes, that
So,
is true.
so something I've kind of hinted at or mentioned a few times is how these are conservative Republicans. They like Donald Trump, but he's not. He's not really a Republican. What are the tenets of the Republican Party for you?
For me. Well, I mean, the Republican Party is a political party, and the platform right now is a conservative one. But the party is just the vehicle. The Republican Party kind of represents the conservative movement in the political process in America, and so I think until this point, um, since Ronald Reagan was given the GOP nomination and elected president in 1980, people have had a pretty clear understanding of what the Republican Party represents vis-a-vis the conservative movement. I think Reagan Reagan conservatism had three kind of main legs to the stool, which is kind of a cliche, but that's how they talk about it. It's a smaller government, right, at home, domestically, smaller government, more personal autonomy at the federal level. You had opposition to communism, the Cold War hawkishness, national security hawkishness, and then social conservatism. The life issue, guns, all that. And so those three legs, you had enough voters in years where they had a good candidate and a winning message. Using those three platform planks, you had enough to cobble together a national a national governing coalition. 50 plus one, if you will, or in Ronald Reagan's case in 1984, 49 states. I think Donald Trump is kind of redefining that as we go along. One of the reasons why I didn't vote for Donald Trump in the primary, and one of the reasons why I'm not on the Trump train right now is, I disagree with him on a lot of very important policies, and so I think what we may be seeing here is literally a redefining of what it means to be a Republican. Um, Now that's not going to redefine what it means to be an American conservative, but we've seen this in the past, and certainly Donald has got the votes to be the leader of the Republican Party now. Um, he's got a much of a different view on trade, which may be frankly part of his appeal. You know, that's one of the big issues that he breaks with Republicans.
So kind of break it down for me. I'm just a regular guy who cruises the internet here and there and sees articles people post on Facebook for his news. What's his big difference between American conservative trade and what Donald Trump stands for?
Well, I mean, it's been trade has been one of the issues that actually has quote unquote transcended partisanship in a way. Going back to Bill Clinton in the early 90s, the Clinton White House was behind NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which is back in vogue these days and a target of both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. But there's been kind of a bipartisan consensus that, given the globalizing world, that bringing down trade barriers and opening up markets to free trade is a good thing, and it's something that's going to help us long term. But that's also brought with it some consequences that have affected our politics, and I think you're seeing the manifestation of that in Donald Trump. He says what people want to hear. Like, we were built in the 20th century largely on the mobilization of World War II as an industrial power, man. And in the post-NAFTA, free trade, globalization world, that kind of manufacturing happens in places like China, and it doesn't happen here anymore. And that's created a lot of problems. And Donald Trump has appealed to a lot of people who rely on manufacturing for their living by saying, look, we're getting killed on trade. We need to put up trade barriers. And Donald Trump doesn't really talk about it in those terms. He just talks about good deals. But I think what he's the message that he's trying to get across is that I'm going to make sure that we can make it so that the trade situation between the two countries, he's going to put up barriers and try to quote unquote bring back manufacturing in this country, which it's a laudable goal. It's unclear to me whether it's possible.
Yeah, I think it's, to me personally, it sounds like something that just makes people happy. Like, I'm going to bring manufacturing jobs back to America. And in practice, it sounds hard. It sounds maybe like not even worthwhile almost. I mean, of course, there should be some manufacturing.
There are trade-offs to everything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, quite frankly, you can make something in China at a fraction of the cost of what you can make it for in the United States. And so, if Donald Trump snapped his fingers and we started manufacturing everything in America, people would be wigging out because their iPhone would go from being $500 to $1,000. And I personally, I think that the globalization train has sailed, and I think it would be wiser policy to try to figure out how to modernize our workforce so that they're prepared to live in a world that where people make things other places. But it's a politically difficult sell.
Yeah, you can't sell people on. I want to modernize you. No one wants to hear that.
No one wants to hear that. It's not politically popular, but it's kind of true that's where things are going. At least in my view. So you got the trade issue with Trump. He's kind of broken with what would be called Republican orthodoxy on that. Um, Healthcare is another place, although he says a lot of things, and sometimes he says things within a week that are completely at odds with each other. He said in the past that he thinks that a single payer system is great. That's certainly not music to the conservatives' ears. We think Obamacare is a disaster, and that going single payer would only make it worse. So there's another place. You've got. I think when I talked about the three stools of Reagan conservatism, we talked about anti-communism, which this is not exactly the same thing, but he's very chummy with with Vladimir Putin, which I guess isn't a surprise since he's willing to say nice things about anybody who praises him. So it's not that hard, I guess, to get Donald to say nice things about you. All you have to do is say nice things about him. But I think people on the right, it gives them pause when they see him say nice things about Vladimir Putin, and it makes them wonder, what kind of president would he be with regard to national security. So the differences are there. He also said things about entitlements that frankly sound more like a Democrat. Not that from my own personal view, we would love to keep the promises of Social Security, but as the system is currently constructed, we're heading for a disaster. And so, as politically painful as it is to tell people, that you're going to change the deal that they've been given, it's necessary in my view, in order to keep us from drowning in debt and for the system to not be there at all. It seems like a no-brainer to me, but that's another place where Trump kind of deviates from kind of a Paul Ryan wing of the Republican Party.
But I bet if you got on a national stage and started talking about getting rid of Social Security, you wouldn't be a very favorable person, just in general.
Sure.
In general,
I'm not talking about getting rid of Social Security, but we're talking about the things that have been discussed.
Right.
Over the years. Should we raise the retirement age? And that was doing things like that.
Changes to the system.
Changes to the system in order to save it, right? Like it's
right.
it's uncontroversial to say that as it currently is, it will eventually go up in flames. Like we just know that. There are more people retiring baby boomers than there are people paying into the system right now. So on a structural level, it's not going to be there as currently constructed unless we make changes, in my view. So we can debate over that, but that's definitely a difference between what Donald Trump thinks and what would be called, by a lot of people, more Republican orthodoxy.
Got it. One thing maybe you can clear up for me is I get confused on this issue. Is when you were talking about Reagan, you said he's very hawkish on foreign policy or military entanglements, and Donald Trump is not at all. However, he says things like, no refugees. I'm going to go overseas and get terrorists. Those two things don't seem to line up for me. They seem like you need to do the same thing both ways. You can't be weak in foreign policy, and then but then we're gonna lock borders down but still find terrorists. Like it's
sure.
I don't quite. It seems very incongruent. He's like two incongruent thoughts to me.
Yeah.
But people love it.
I mean, what it sounds like to me, the Republican that you brought on to give the Republican view. I mean, to me, it sounds a little bit like what we've got right now. President Obama likes to present himself as a dovish occupant of the White House, but when you look at the record, he's had some interventions, but the cornerstones of his foreign policy have been two things: making peace with people who are historically not our friends, got the Iran deal, and using our drone system to kill terrorists, right? So he gets a reputation as a pretty dovish president because in a lot of ways he is one, but on that score he does use the drones, and I think that is tied to his personal reluctance to use our military as the human part of our military as a solution, but it is a way of appearing to be anti-war without necessarily being it in practice.
I never thought about that. It's pretty smart.
That's what we try to do here.
Hey.
But hey, no, Donald Trump is an enigma because he he probably doesn't have it all figured out yet.
Oh, I'm fully in agreement there. So what are you gonna do as a Republican? What are you gonna do? How are you gonna vote? What are you gonna do during this election? What's important to you? How are you gonna try to solve this problem for personally?
Sure. I mean,
or what should other Republicans in your shoes do also?
I mean, I would not presume to tell people how they should vote. I mean, I don't have it all figured out, as I'll get into in a second. I don't know, so I don't know if I'm in the position to tell anybody else what they ought to be doing. But I have friends who are fully supporting Donald Trump. I've got friends and colleagues that are never Trump. I've got friends and colleagues that are never Trump that are going to either vote for Gary Johnson or hoping for some sort of other third-party option. I've got
Gary Johnson's the libertarian guy, right?
Yes, Gary Johnson, former governor of New Mexico. He ran in 2012 as well as the libertarian standard bearer. He got, I think, somewhere around like low single digits in 2012. I wouldn't be surprised if he got much closer to 10% this time, just because there's going to be. I mean, as things stand right now, you have to slap the asterisk on there and say that politics is it's a fluid and dynamic thing, and it can change in an instant. But yeah. So
you're not sure yet. Undecided. We got time.
I got time. I mean, look, it's incumbent upon Donald Trump to make the case for why Republicans and why Americans generally should vote for him. I mean, he decided to seek the presidency, and now he's gotten his wish, and it's his time to make his campaign and make his sell to the American people. He certainly hasn't made that sale yet with me, and I personally could not vote for Hillary Clinton. I think as baffled as some people are on rightfully so that Donald Trump has been the choice of Republicans. I'm a little dismayed that the Democrats have decided to go with Hillary Clinton based on her conduct with the emails and such. I think there's a pretty clear case that she's not been trustworthy with our national secrets, and that that causes some concern. So
just knowing you, I couldn't imagine you wanting Bernie Sanders over Hillary, though.
Here's the thing. I disagree with Bernie Sanders on a lot of things, but I think on a basic level he would be honest. He would do the job for the right reasons. I wonder with Hillary, whether is it about what she wants to do with the country, or is it she wants to be the president of the United States?
I mean, I've always said it takes a certain kind of person to want to run for office.
It does. It
Let's just
takes
leave
an
it at
insane
that.
person. It takes an insane person. Um, you know, I just, having worked in this business, the amount of time that it takes, the amount of scrutiny that you bring onto your family, um, the amount of times you have to ask another human being if they'll give you some of their money. I mean, it just, no thank you for me. It takes
Sounds awful.
Yeah, but um,
So you kind of touched on something else. Why hasn't any of the Republican Party, the party machine, or senators, representatives, somebody, I feel like there hasn't really been like a good opposition to Donald Trump. I feel like a lot of people are in the position you are, where hey Donald, sell me on your policies, sell me on what you're going to do. And the best I see is Paul Ryan going, I don't know.
right.
I'm with it, but I'm not. I'm Paul Ryan. Like why doesn't someone just say, hey, look, just someone bang the drum and say, I don't know if you can do this. Sell me. Like stick to your
Sure.
guns. I feel like if someone did that, they would look so strong, and they would maybe even prime themselves for the next election cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think in the reality of how it ended up happening, I think there was a long period of time when he first said that he was going to get in the race where people just didn't take him seriously. They thought that there was no chance. This guy's a joke. I didn't think, a lot of people, including myself, didn't think that he was going to get in at all. I personally thought he was going to come out and call a press conference and say, "Hey, I'm not doing this White House thing, but catch me on season whatever of The Apprentice," and that didn't happen. But I guess my point is that first people didn't take him seriously enough, and then by the time he'd gotten traction, it's difficult. He's
I,
running as a Republican, and at some point, you know, it reaches a point where somebody becomes a plausible nominee, and when they reach that point, there are certainly some people who were slinging arrows at Donald Trump no matter what, but on some level, there's just because of the way politics works. There wasn't ever like a moment where everybody said, "Okay, we got to get this guy," um, and I wish it would have happened, but
I still think there's time. I think if some senator who I don't know could, this some senator from some state could just stand up and say, hey, I'm being strong here. I don't know what to do. I This senator probably wouldn't be in an election cycle because
right,
you don't want to go, against your party when you're trying to get nominated, or elected, not nominated. But yeah, I just think you'd look so good if you stood up to, not even stood up, just spoke out.
sure.
You wouldn't seem like a sheep. You would
There's
seem
a
like
guy,
someone who thinks for themselves, and people seem to like that.
Senator Ben Sass is a guy that's been doing that. He's been one of the people that's been knocked around as like a potential independent third-party candidate that some of the conservative magazine types have been hyping. But it's a big risk. I think
Also,
we're
as I say it, I think the media still has to cover it, and you probably don't get as many clicks
right. I mean,
covering that kind of
that's
stuff
part of
as
it
you do
too,
get some
right?
guy who makes fun of
Is
federal judges.
right. Well, I mean, that's part of it too. Is Donald Trump happened partially because he came along at a moment where our journalism system has changed on a very fundamental level, right? You've got all these outlets competing for dollars, and you've had to wholesale change to the basic economics of the industry. Before the internet, um, the economic model was subscription and advertising sales, because they decided to give away journalism when the internet first came along. They haven't been able to. No one has really been able to do a good job creating a quote unquote subscriber base. People are trying to get around and do that now, but basically people make money by getting people to eyeballs on their pages and selling advertising space, and that's the rise of clickbait journalism. And Donald Trump was generating a ton of interest. You know, he was a crossover point between culture and politics. You know, people who are not in tune with politics know who Donald Trump is, and so you know, he made it very easy for people to kind of that don't normally pay attention to politics to get involved on the action, because he's kind of like a compelling figure, you know. Maybe he's a carnival barker, but you know, people can't do anything but watch. So, you know,
guilty as charged.
He was able to exploit that. Look, I mean, like I listen to the guy, and you know, half the time he says something impolitic or you know, some policy that I'm at odds with. But then there's other moments where you're like, this guy's funny. Like, he just is. He's a charismatic guy, and he's got a sense of humor, and he's worth listening to on some level. You know, I wish he wasn't running for president, but he is kind of a perfect candidate for the moment we're in. You know, I mean, he's just got a lot of things going for him.
Are you concerned that this opens the door for other ridiculous candidates who have a fan base, a large fan base, or is this so not polarizing? It's not the right word. It's just so disgusting, I guess, that that actually closes the door. No one wants to see this side.
I mean, I think it could go either way. I mean, we're gonna have to see how it goes, right? Like, if the guy gets blown out and humiliated in November, you know, I don't think you're gonna see another celebrity so quick to jump onto this. I mean, you know, and that's the other thing. It's not. I mean, I think if you ask Trump, he would tell you it's really hard. You know, like, it's not something that you can just go out and do. But I mean, certainly,
no, of course not.
He's shown that having a profile in culture is an invaluable political asset. Like, if you are positioned to make that switch over, that's a huge asset. And so I could definitely see a candidate down the road, whether it's Jay-Z or somebody else.
I was thinking like maybe like Mark Zuckerberg or something. Someone everybody knows, who knows is successful or has an air of successfulness around them, and then you just cash that in.
Well, we were talking just a second ago about the conservative magazine types that have been trying to recruit a third-party candidate. One of the people that they talked to, apparently, according to the reporting, is Mark Cuban.
Oh, God help us all.
I know. As a Lakers fan, I'd be horrified about that. But apparently he thought about it.
I mean, how could you not? If you're a guy like that with a lot of money and a lot of social cachet, I mean, you almost have to think about it.
If I ruled the world and all.
Exactly. All right, well, let's make a real hard turn here.
Okay.
I thought of you for one other reason. People who have listened to my voice before know that I do a USC podcast, and Travis Burke, not only a USC alum. One of the reasons we're friends is we're some of the few Trojan fans running around our high school, because those were dark days for USC.
Indeed.
So what are your thoughts? USC quarterback battle. Do you go with the freshman or do you go with the, I guess, incumbent?
Well, so I gotta admit, so you know, obviously being out here, I don't get to go to practice. I haven't seen a whole lot of film on both these guys. I've seen the YouTube compilations. I mean, Max is got a fantastic reputation. He's been in the system for a couple years, and you know, I gotta think that he would do a good job as quarterback. You know, I don't know Tim Helton at all, but you know, I hope that you know, he's committed to doing what's best for the team. And just given the fact that Max hasn't locked it up, I got to think that there's something about Sam Darnold. You know, it's very easy to go with the guy that's been in the system for 2 years and say, okay, he's going to be our starter. Sam's had a fantastic camp. That he's holding it open like this, I got to think that he's seeing flashes of something special. What about you? Mike. Mike.
Hello?
Hey.
Hey, there we go. All right, hold on one second. My phone died.
Uh,
It's okay, I can edit it. It won't be a problem.
Cool. Has
Worse has happened before.
Gone?
What?
How do you think this has gone?
Really well.
You think?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like all nervous about it.
I'll depending on how good Game of Thrones is, I'll edit this like to get rid of some of the ums and long pauses and stuff.
Yeah, there are a couple of points where I like kind of just freaking went blank.
No, trust me, when you listen, you're gonna think you did way worse than you really did. As someone who's done this like a bunch of times now.
I like your format, man. I think it's really cool.
So yeah, so you're gonna think you did terrible, and you're gonna like cut yourself to pieces when you listen. So don't.
How many people listen to this thing?
This one, I think the last time I did it, I just got an iTunes link, so I haven't really like.
Yeah, I saw that. That's awesome, man.
I haven't put it anywhere, but I think the last one got like 40 people.
That's great.
So this one will probably do around there, and I'll share a little more. Now that I can direct people to iTunes so they can subscribe and stuff.
Yeah,
they can be a more regular listener. Have you ever listened to the USC podcast I do?
I don't think so. So I definitely. What's that one called?
It's a terrible title. It's the Tilting Ground Untitled USC Notre Dame Football Podcast.
Okay. I will check that out for sure.
I think if you type in USC onto iTunes or Podcast Center or whatever it is, it's like the fourth thing that comes up.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. But if you type Tilting Ground, it doesn't come up at all.
But USC.
But for some reason, when the USC hits, yeah, like it's one of the top ones.
That's freaking awesome.
So that one, that's I was like practice.
Mark,
here, let's finish this, and then
right,
we can chat a little more. All right, let's get a pause here. So you were saying you were talking about Sam Darnold, and like there must be something about him. So five. Hold on. 5, 4, 3, go.
So I think there's got to be something to Sam Darnold because I can't imagine that Tim Helton would hold this open when you've got a true freshman and you've got a guy that's been in the system for 2 years. He was Gatorade Player of the Year or whatever, top quarterback in high school coming out of Washington.
He was ahead of Jared Goff, right?
Yeah.
So Clay Helton. You keep calling him Tim.
Did I call him Tim?
Yeah, I was like, who's?
Can we go back and re-record the whole thing then? I want to. Who's Tim?
All right, we can start. We can at least start. You said it once before, but all right, start at
Yeah,
Sam Darnold. Start Sam Darnold again.
Okay.
Go.
So I don't get to watch practice as much as I used to, living out here on the East Coast. But I gotta believe that Clay Helton is as the new coach wants to have the best shot at success, and so I have to think that Sam Darnold just must be an amazing talent because you've got a guy like Max Brown who's been in the program a couple years already. He's got years in the system. He was incredibly highly rated quarterback coming out of Washington State. So I can't imagine normally in this kind of situation you'd see the veteran name the starter. What do you think? I mean, what's your read on it?
I think the same thing as you is this. He's got to be good. He's got to be real good if he's pushing Max Brown. But the concern is that he's just going to get. You can't start a freshman against Alabama.
Right.
You just can't. So USC's, for those of you who don't listen to the other podcast, USC's first game this year is against Alabama. And if you send a first-time starting quarterback out against Alabama, I think you're just asking for a loss. So what's the point?
Well, either way, it's going to be a first time.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I got really excited about that game when I saw it pop on the schedule a few years back, and I took a pass on it because as much as I love USC and the Trojans, I think it's going to be an uphill battle going against Alabama. The second game of the Clay Helton regime.
Right. Oh man.
The official.
That's rough. But I like playing top competition. I think if you're a college football team and you play the best, that's just good on your program.
No, absolutely, totally agree. And USC is always scheduled that way. Whether it's Ohio State or
Florida State back in our days.
Back in the day, when we were in high school, a team that was much more in vogue among our teammates playing football in the 90s. Yeah.
And you have to be excited about Sua Cravens being a Redskin.
I am very excited about that. That's my next jersey purchase is going to be a Sua Cravens Redskins jersey. I think he's 36. So
he's wearing Sean Taylor's old number.
Yep. So very exciting. Very, very exciting. And they should be pretty good this year. But as far as USC goes, tough start, but it'll be very interesting to see, the quarterback, how they develop. There's certainly a lot of talent on offense, and I'm excited to see the defense this year. So I think it'll be good, but it may not start out like a national championship season. But excited to see where it goes.
Well, good. Well, hey, Travis, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I like having someone who knows their stuff and who keeps an open mind, I think.
It's been a lot of fun, Mike. Really enjoyed it and love the podcast. So thank you so much for having me on, and would love to do it again if the topic suits. So
I like it. That sounds like a good idea. Everyone listening, I have an iTunes link now, so please click on that and subscribe to the podcast. You can get these into your phone whenever a new one pops up. If you like politics, apparently is the theme now, but there'll be some TV stuff, movie stuff, and whatever floats my fancy. So once again, I want to thank Travis, and I guess we'll end this one with Fight On.
Fight on.
I'm going to stop recording.